I was reading your case for Black patriotism. That's what it was. And maybe this is a good place to shift gears.
Okay.
And in this piece, you make the case for why Black people should see America and its exceptionalism as part of its own legacy. I don't mean to mischaracterize you. Do you want to sum up your argument in your own words?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm pushing back a little bit against the fashionable, skeptical attitude about the American project. How did Loury put it in a 4th of July piece that he had in the Griot? F-U-C-K, the 4th of July. Juneteenth is my holiday. Okay, and I'm basically just saying, you know, if we want to solve the problems of the African American community in the 21st century, we're not going to get it done at the United Nations or in the World Court. We're going to get it done in the cauldron of American politics, and we need our fellow Americans to get it done. And on the whole, while the story is a story that includes slavery and Jim Crow segregation and redlining and all the rest, the story is also a story that includes emancipation and the civil rights movement and all the rest. And if you look at it in terms of the long arc of history, of world history, it's a little bit of a challenge to find another instance of an enslaved and dominated people who, over the course of a century and a half, are empowered with full and nearly equal, I don't want to quibble, citizenship within the polity. I mean, slavery has been a commonplace of human culture. Emancipation is a relatively rare experience, and although it has taken a long time, we are now in the 21st century. We have experienced the presidency of Barack Obama, not a panacea to be sure, but certainly an indication of a different political opportunity set than existed previously. We've got billionaires. We're the richest people of African descent on the planet. We're basically a very privileged people in a situation that affords boundless opportunity. And there's nothing wrong with, warts and all, affirming the value of our membership in this political community rather than sitting petulantly off to the side with our fists balled up or our arms folded across our chest, tapping our toe and saying, America, I'm waiting for you to live up to your promise.
What's so interesting about this is that I am really loath to agree with Loury in any respect here. However, the problem for me, I'm not especially interested in what ultimately to me feels like a very performative kind of anti-patriotism. And for political reasons, those being my goal of establishing a broad multiracial coalition of folks, many of whom I know are very deeply invested in America as a country and are very proud. I think it's natural to like where you're from. I for all of its warts, I grew up overseas and spent half my childhood, playing the "your country sucks, my country's better than your" game with international kids. And, I understand that kind of intrinsic desire to defend one's home. But just like loving your parents and being committed to them and wanting to defend them doesn't mean that you have to be blind to their failings, especially at your own deficit, according to your therapist. It doesn't mean that you have to have blinders on into what America has really done. And you kind of in this article set up a sort of a binary. You say, is America a venal, immoral, rapacious bandit society of plundering white supremacists founded in genocide and slavery and propelled by capitalist greed, or a good country that affords boundless opportunity to all fortunate enough to enjoy the privileges and bear the responsibilities of citizenship? And you go on to say, of course, there is some warrant in the historical record for both sentiments, which I would agree with. It's a little A, it's a little B, it's an enormous, diverse country with, at this point, a longish history. We're getting there, we're catching up. And there's going to be some things that we should all be proud of as a country and things that we should all condemn as a nation. But I'm curious about why the need to even tee up the, quote, weight of the evidence in one way or the other. Why does it matter if we can accept both truths as real? Why the desire to get particularly Black people or any other group that has plenty of cause to want to draw attention to the country's failings that up until the 1960s were largely papered over historically. Why the desire to push back against them and kind of what it feels like is force them to adopt the mainstream kind of whitewashed version of American exceptionalism?
I said patriotism, not jingoism, and I make a distinction between the two. So it's not one of these, kind of reflexive, my country, right or wrong, die for the flag, wrap myself in the flag, Donald Trump-esque. That's not where I'm coming from. My main motivation, you ask why, is a fear that the consumption by elites, who are very privileged people who have microphones put in front of them and television cameras turned on when they enter the room, of a very personal kind of sentiment. They're alienated from their country. They're angry. They have a particular ideological perspective, and they consume that in their expressions. Colin Kaepernick taking a knee is a classic case of this. Has a cost. The cost is in terms of political backlash and alienation of people whom we need and who are our natural allies. And here I'm going to betray the influence of my Bernie Sanders supporting wife, LaJuan, who is constantly saying, we need a working class coalition of progressives in order to get, the policies with, child care, health care, et cetera, et cetera. And excuse me, even though I didn't vote for Bernie Sanders, I'm going to confess that I have a great deal of sympathy for that sentiment. And we can't get it done on our own. We're only 10, 12, 13% of the population here. I'm talking about African Americans. And we can't get it done with a coalition of non-whites. In my opinion, that's the wrong way to go. And even though I might not sign off on the entire policy agenda of the left wing of the Democratic Socialists of America or whatever, I will sign off on the Adolph Reed articulated impulse to define the issues in such a way that we can bring the interests of people across racial lines into alignment with one another. For many people, the Pledge of Allegiance or the Star-Spangled Banner or Abraham Lincoln or FDR or whatever, we're going to take down George Washington style. For many people, that's gratuitously offensive. And it gives a wide opening to the Sean Hannitys of the world, who no longer wants to look at the NFL. He says, Saturday is my football day. He's going to watch college football, not pro football. And of course, he's Sean Hannity, whatever. But there are millions, tens of millions of people that are influenced by that kind of thing. We need those people on the side of a political program aimed at effectively addressing the most serious problems confronting the African American community. So that's, and there are going to be some issues. If I keep talking, I'll get myself into trouble. There are going to be some issues like immigration, where the right want to build a wall on the border, where the experience of a dispossessed people who have come fitfully into some semblance of equal citizenship, that's African Americans, militates in favor of sympathy for those who seek refuge. On the other hand, where the sort of economic facts on the ground might actually say that there's some competition or some trade-off between the interests of these various parties. Let me not be cryptic. It's not obviously the case that the interest of an unskilled, lower working class African American native-born person, whatever their color, is advanced by relatively liberal immigration policies, bringing large numbers of low-skilled people in and so forth, even if they're people of color. So there are going to be arguments. I'm not saying that whites and blacks across the working class are going to agree about everything, but the gratuitous offense given to the country-loving sentiments of many of our fellow citizens by the indulgence, as I see it, of ideas that are really the privilege of the ideological elites amongst African Americans is the thing I'm objecting to.